live. Checking to see if we are also live. Let me see. I'm gonna make sure we're popping up on
all the various platforms.
yeah, why is it normally just pops up over on Zapstream
Take your time.
and it's not for some reason. That's frustrating. Let's see. I tried it this different way where I pre-planned it and then sent you the links.
Yeah, yeah.
Shoot,
No, it's all good.
maybe we won't be going on Zapstream today.
This is very stimulating live content right here. We're like, does the stream work? I don't know.
This is incredible. Dang it. I'm the worst. Okay. Anyways, well, hey everybody. This is podcast show number 5 for me. We're making it more fun this time, and HODL has kindly agreed to join in. Looks like we have a few people in the YouTube live chat already. So hey everybody, really not Dave, Chad. Yep, American HODL is the first guest. I don't know if you can see these HODL coming through.
See him for whatever
Kevin's
reason.
here, Noah's here. So yeah, this is going to be good. We also have a
Oh, there it
special
is.
guest.
Got it.
Fish Bernoulli is also coming at some point. And so
Yeah, Fish is one of my homies. Me and Jeff know him from Bitcoin Clubhouse, and I thought Fish would be a good person to join the conversation with us because me and him spend a lot of time talking about market timing and Bitcoin cycles, and he also is a person who does his own proprietary, charting, and I think he has good and interesting insights if he shows up though. I mean, he's very lazy, so we don't know if he's going to be here.
I love it. I love it. Hey, so the reason I wanted HODL to come on today is because he and I have almost the exact same outlook on Bitcoin and what 2025 is going to bring. We were talking about MSTR this morning, and we thought, well, if we're going to be texting about it, we might as well do a live stream
Yeah.
about it and share it with everybody else.
This is a
So
safe space. It's the echo chamber for bullish chads. So if you're
yes,
not one of those, get the fuck out. Get out.
yes, we don't want
Not
you here.
welcome.
If let me do this. I'm going to change my stuff here. Window. Okay.
Cool.
I have my chart up. Can you see that, Huddle?
Yeah, I can see it
Okay,
good.
you're looking at it. So I'm going to start with this chart because I love this chart. And I know that there are a lot of, Bitcoin maxis who I consider myself a maxi, and I think HODL does too. But we also both are fans of MicroStrategy
Mhm.
or strategy because because we're not stupid, I would say, and because if you like Bitcoin, then intelligent leveraged long Bitcoin will probably do even better than Bitcoin. Is the way I look at it. And I'll say one more thing. For the last, like 2 years ago, I said the only equity I see that has the chance of outperforming Bitcoin for the next 10 years is, at the time, MicroStrategy, now called Strategy. I still believe that. I don't think Bitcoin miners can outperform Bitcoin over the long run. It's too capital intensive. It's a dog eat dog world. I think there's a new player in the space, which is Dylan's company, right? Metaplanet in Japan. He's pulling the Sailor model. He's a smart kid. He's going to pull a Sailor, and I think he'll be successful. And they're basically following the exact same playbook. I think those are the only two equities now that I think can outperform Bitcoin over the next 10 years, and I'm still holding to that. You got thoughts on that, Huddle?
I pretty much 100% agree with your assessment. Now my portfolio weighting is, 80-20 Bitcoin. So there's 20 in MSTR and other Bitcoin derivatives, but 80% of it is in Bitcoin, right? So like, I'm very confident that Bitcoin is going to be perform in the manner that we think it's going to perform. I'm less confident in MSTR based on my portfolio weighting because there are a lot more risk variables there. That said, I think if the strategy is executed at a high level as it has been up to this point, and there aren't significant unknowns, then yeah, I think it does have the potential to outperform Bitcoin at least over a time period. People get into this conversation about, well, can it continue outperforming Bitcoin, into the future? I don't know how long it outperforms, but over the next like 10 years, I think there's a very strong case for outperformance. And I've been holding MSTR since close to inception, not inception, but since they adopted their Bitcoin strategy. And in that time, it has outperformed Bitcoin. And, the point of holding something like that is to make more Bitcoin. That said, though, again, it's a lower confidence rating for me.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, and just so everybody knows, my blanket recommendation is just buy and hold Bitcoin, dollar cost average. Don't
Yeah.
mess with this stuff. I only mess with it because I'm a fund manager. HODL messes with it because he's got nothing else to do, so he likes to mess with things and he likes to mess with people's minds. So that's why we're here. Um, hopefully, you guys can get some stuff out of it. Hey, so here, check out this chart. I like this chart and I use it. This is MicroStrategy, but using Bitcoin in dollar terms as the denominator.
Mm-hmm.
What, first of all, the first thing you should notice is that this is over the last, say, let's go back here a bit. So he initially started doing this here. Let's go to the 5 year. He initially started doing this strategy in 2020, right? Like around March of 2020.
Yeah.
What do you notice? Here's what I notice. It went sideways for a long time, meaning that basically the price of MicroStrategy was kind of comparable to the price of Bitcoin. And then here in about January of 2024, it decided to start shooting higher.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you look at I'm going to do the back to the 1 year chart, go back to, about here. So we're about a year and a half or more. This chart, what I notice is it's up and to the right in Bitcoin terms. This is like the only asset you will see that's up and to the right in Bitcoin terms over
Yeah.
time, I think. So that kind of gets back to our point. I'm again not recommending anybody buy this, right? I'm saying the reason why my hedge fund did so well is because we had a large bet placed in MicroStrategy and MicroStrategy calls, and we can talk about that
Mm-hmm.
a little bit later. But and then this is my last point, and then I'll let you talk, Huddle. Here's what I look for: extremes. Okay, so look down here. See how the RSI here popped down to 29 on January 16th, 2024. Um, and then we haven't seen those kind of lows. We had some times like here back on August 5th. That was the yen carry trade implosion where everybody was flipping out. It went down again here in early September. That people were freaking out. Would have been another great time to buy. This here, what we just saw yesterday when I did my emergency LOL podcast, um, was the lowest it's been since all the way back in the beginning of January. So the price of Bitcoin relative to the price of Bitcoin has been is at a recent low, and the RSI, so the strength of the movement, hit a very, very oversold level. Historically speaking, if you buy MicroStrategy at these points, you do pretty well. That's
Mm-hmm.
how I look at it. So in my hedge fund, even though I was basically fully allocated already to my Bitcoin positions, I've been going bananas in my hedge fund, buying Bitcoin and MicroStrategy calls. Most of it was done yesterday. Some of it was done early this morning. Huddle and I were texting a little bit about that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I think we're going to do really well. I'm feeling very optimistic about the next, say, 6 to 9 months on these positions.
It's interesting because, I'm not an analytical trader, investor. I'm, more gut feel and a long term buy and hold person. And yesterday, I just intuitively felt that it was the right time to buy more MicroStrategy. Even before I saw your live stream, the emergency live stream, and then I watched it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, Jeff is basically confirming here what I already did, and so I like things that confirm my bias, right? So I'm
Right.
like, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, the RSI is oversold. Of course, it's oversold. Of course, man. That makes total sense. And so, yeah, really, it's just for me, it's like when you feel pain, when there's blood in the streets, when people are panicking, it's the classic Warren Buffett, be greedy when others are fearful. Warren has a better quote that I think of quite often, which is, you pay a high price for a cheery consensus.
Hmm.
And I fell victim to that a little bit myself on MSTR because I had bought MSTR when they first started the Bitcoin strategy. And then I had really not paid that much attention to it because it was in my wife's retirement account. And like, who cares about that, right? Um, but then I checked in on it and it was doing very well. And I was like, wait a second. And I think it was up something like 6x in Bitcoin terms. And that was the thing of up and to the right in Bitcoin terms. I was like, what the hell goes up 6x in Bitcoin terms? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, So then I got a little excited and I doubled my position probably at the wrong time. And so now I'm undoing that mistake by buying when there's blood in the streets. You know,
Nice.
I'm averaging that position down.
Love it. Love it. So I don't want to fanboy over MicroStrategy, right? That's not really why we're here.
Right.
Other than to say yesterday, I think was a great opportunity to buy it. So was early this morning, the first like 15, 20 minutes of trading, people were still panicking and MicroStrategy had dipped way lower. Here's the chart of, yeah, this is the daily chart. So we look here. Today it got as low as 244 a share. So that's pretty good. It's back up to 257 now. I still think that probably will have marked a local bottom, and that we go higher from here. It could take another leg lower. That's what I also like to tell people. Like, you can go from very oversold to even more very oversold from a technical standpoint. But the more it does that, the more the probabilities rise that the next move is going to be a big move higher.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm counting on.
I
So yeah.
yeah, there's some people talking right now about, broader about Bitcoin, that Bitcoin's going into the 70 range. And it wouldn't overly surprise me if it did do that, but my gut feel here is that, this might be the bottom of the correction, or close to it anyway. That, like, maybe lower 80s. 83, 84 is a number I had been thinking like a month ago. So that wouldn't surprise me either. We'll just have to see what happens over the next, few weeks.
Yep. I had the same target HODL. I think I posted back in December or something. I said, I think we're going to spike higher and then we're going to pull way back, basically because of the dollar strength and then the effect that the dollar. So a strong dollar has a negative effect on global M2 monetary supply
Mhm.
because the whole supply is priced in dollars, and because governments, when they have debt that's denominated in dollars, it gets harder and harder for them to pay off that debt, pay those interest payments. So they have less money to put into their economy from a liquidity standpoint. And what I told people back in the fourth quarter is, I said, wait until the dollar breaks. That will mark the bottom of global M2 declining. And then once it breaks and starts weakening, we'll see global M2 start to rise again. And then why does that matter? Because Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin closely correlates with what global M2 is doing, but with a delay. There's usually some Mike, what's his cross-border capital, Michael Howell did some great work. So did Lynn Alden and Sam Callahan, showing the correlation between these. Michael Howell went a step further and talked about the delay. When you have big movements in M2, global M2, the price of Bitcoin is delayed by about 7 to 15 weeks after that. So what you can read from that is, since we had kind of that local bottom in global M2 kind of in early January, think about 7 to 15 weeks later than that. So maybe a month and a half to 3 months, somewhere in there. It's probably when we'll see the bottom in Bitcoin, and then we should see it run higher. So we may have got that same bottom. I was saying, to your point, HODL,
Mhm.
that I think Bitcoin could get as low as somewhere between 75 to 86,000 range, and we kind of hit that recently.
Yeah.
So these, I'm fine. There are people who are still waiting with cash on the sidelines for it to go to 70. I don't work like that. I'm like, you know what? I would like it to go down to 70, but there's no guarantee it will. It may pop, and if it pops before you buy in, you're going to miss a great buying opportunity.
This is always true in Bitcoin. I remember in 2018, there were a lot of people prognosticating the bear market got pretty brutal that year, and there were a lot of people prognosticating that the price was going to go to 1,000 or even sub 1,000, and the bears were sort of on parade at the bottom there. And I, as an eternal optimist, bulltard, I have the opposite problem where when the price is at 6,600, I go, "This is a great buy. Let's do it." And then I put a big slug in, and then I get cut in half, and I'm like, "Ugh." But then once you've already been cut in half, you're like, "I might as well do it again,
Right,
whatever." And
right.
so then I put the rest of it in. And the key is just to buy all throughout that range. And so if I look back at my buys from that time period, I mean, the average cost basis on them is probably something like 4,200. And, like, at the time, sure, I didn't catch like 3,200 or whatever the actual bottom was, but you look back now and those are really, really good buys, right? And so that's the thing, is like, just start buying, but don't put all your dry powder in at once if you have dry powder. And also, if you have dry powder, what are you doing, man? You shouldn't have any dry powder. You should have already been all the way in, you
Right,
know?
right. Like life on a Bitcoin standard, right? I mean, that is like true freedom financially. I've noticed for myself and for clients of mine. Once you finally grasp Bitcoin enough, that you want to go pretty much all in, it's just the best feeling because you don't care about the price. You just get your paychecks and you convert them automatically into Bitcoin at whatever the price is. And it really doesn't matter. And then you go about your day and you do what you like to do, like
Mhm.
grow your business or you hang out with your family or you do whatever it is you do. And the price of Bitcoin has this uncanny ability to take care of itself over time. And over time, you'll realize you're actually in a really good spot financially. Like the purchasing power that you've accrued over time, just because all you've done is faithfully dollar cost average into it, will have life changing effects on you. So I couldn't be more positive on living on a Bitcoin standard and just dollar cost averaging and not worrying about these ridiculous price movements where everybody flips out.
Totally. Something I'd like to ask you about, Jeff, and get your take on is, I talk to a lot of people that are more plugged in to macro than I am. I'm sort of like an intrinsic Bitcoin person. I only pay attention to Bitcoin. Um, it seems that the Dixie and the VIX are both very important indicators and sort of like opposite sides of the same coin. Do you take those to be, tells for you? Do you put a lot of stock in that as an indicator?
So I like to look at these things. It's a great question. I like to look at these things here, and let's while we're talking. Here's the VIX, just so people know.
Yep.
VIX is just the volatility of the S&P 500 index. That's what people are talking about when they say the VIX. You'll say that over time it basically chops sideways. Let's get a longer chart here, 5-year chart. Oh yeah, got to get the Bollinger Bands out of there because they distort it. Okay, it's been trending down, but we have these occasional spikes.
Hmm.
What I've noticed is when people are panicking, yesterday was a good example of this, but we had another one back here in early August, right? This was the yen carry trade unwind, which lots of people were saying would be the end of the world, had this huge spike higher in the VIX. What happens is people panic, they get scared. There are lots of leveraged longs that get liquidated very
Hmm.
quickly. So I call it the leveraged long liquidation cascade, LLLC. They get liquidated and they don't have a choice. What happens is their brokerage house says, hey, we need a lot of money right now. You don't have it. Okay, we're going to liquidate everything you have and we're going to get our cash that you owe us. And they do that. And that happens to thousands and tens of thousands of people basically all at the same time. So all of these people that had positions in whatever, it could be Bitcoin, it could be stocks, it could be anything that's basically liquid, gets liquidated and those people move to cash. So they're freaking out. VIX spikes, and the reason you see dollar spikes at those exact same times are because suddenly everybody is long the dollar. They're shorting, they're selling their assets, their stocks and their Bitcoin, and they're moving to the dollar. So you see these dollar spikes. So yeah, I definitely pay attention to that. I also like to pay regarding the Dixie. I like to pay attention to what it's doing over the long term. Here's the Dixie, the 5-year chart. So you'll notice from here back in May of 2021 through September of 2022, we had this massive run higher in the dollar. And then let me go back because this is, I think, informative. What happened the last time Trump got elected, I think, was very telling and informative because I think that's sort of the same playbook. Here, oops, sorry, ignore that. Okay, so back in August of 2016, before the election, the dollar was kind of just chilling. Then the elections happened. Trump, it started to be clear that Trump might actually win. Then he wins, and the dollar spikes, and it spiked higher. So it went from this low point of 91 to a high point of about 102. And then, if you remember back then, Trump said, "I don't want a strong dollar, and I don't want high interest rates. I want lower interest rates, and I want a lower dollar." And behold, lo and behold, what happened is we had this dollar decline all the way out throughout 2017 and into early 2018. And here it kind of bottomed all the way through kind of like April of 2018. Why is that important? Because he's saying the exact same things this time. And I think we're going to see the exact same thing, right? September, dollar was weak. Trump, it looked like, okay, I think he's actually going to win this election. Okay, he gets elected right around here. And then the dollar spikes and it spiked up here to 110. I told people here that once it rolled over right about here, I said, I think that's probably the peak for the year. And the reason why I said that's the dollar peak for the year is because looking back at the equivalent year back in 2017 when Trump was first elected. So I'm guessing we'll see the dollar weaken throughout almost all of 2017
Mm,
with a couple of bumps. And why does that matter? So getting back to, because it's good for global liquidity. When the dollar is weakening, it makes it easier for other countries to add liquidity to their systems without breaking their own currency. So I said, and then another thing that I think is super important is, since Bitcoin is a global asset that runs on, the fumes of what global M2 is doing. Um, I don't think the majority of liquidity is going to come from the U.S. this year. I think it's actually going to come from China. So China, their market blows. Like they have been getting crushed. They've been in a recession. Their housing market has been collapsing. Their interest rates have been falling. The yuan has been falling relative to the dollar. They haven't been able to do significant QE. Because that would just crush the yuan, and they can't do that. So they've been waiting for the dollar to break, and now that the dollar is broken, they can start adding significant amounts of liquidity. So I think if you want to see where the liquidity is going to come from for the next year or so, look to China, and that liquidity will drive the price of Bitcoin higher over the next year. I think the U.S. liquidity is more of a red herring.
Um, one thing, it's super interesting when I'm listening to you talk about that, and something I've heard from others is that the strong dollar is sort of a one of the strongest negotiation tools in Trump's arsenal. And so I think if we look at the way he's been coming in hot and being like, "Hey, Canada, what's up? You're on notice, bitch," like I think that once he starts, sort of making the deals that he wants and getting things in place, then it's like all clear to like basically devalue the dollar, the
Yeah,
dollar.
right.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Raoul Paul, people hate him in the Bitcoin space, but he's actually a brilliant macro thinker. I love his macro takes, and Julian Bittel, or Bittel, is on his team too. They're fantastic macro thinkers, and forward-looking macro thinkers, which is critical for fund management. He has talked about the dollar, and to your point, HODL, basically using it as the carrot and a stick. So at first, he's
yeah.
using the strong dollar as the stick to sort of beat people with, and once they concede to his demands, his negotiating techniques, then they'll allow it to be the carrot, and they'll weaken the dollar, and it'll be good for everybody who's on board with Team America heading throughout 2017. So I think it's a great strategy personally.
No, 100. It makes total sense, and like our job as investors is just to try and take advantage of that. And it's like if the dollar is going to be devalued, then we're going to see like monetary inflation, yeah, asset
Yep.
inflation. And if
Yep.
we're seeing asset inflation, then you want the fastest horse in the race, which is Bitcoin or levered Bitcoin, if depending on your risk appetite, right?
Don't use leverage, kids.
Right. Well,
Uh,
MSTR is levered Bitcoin, but it's you don't have to deal with the risk of liquidation. You're not
yes.
being hunted on the order books when you own MSTR,
Exactly.
which
And
is
and
nice.
and for all the naysayers out there, Sailor is not going to get liquidated, you guys. Even if Bitcoin drops 80%, the Bitcoin that they own at MicroStrategy at Strategy now, sorry, at Strategy is unencumbered, meaning that
Right.
it's nobody can come and take it if things get really ugly. So and he owns it all at basically a 0% interest rate. So he's not going to get just crushed if interest rates rise or anything like that. He's in a fine position, so don't worry about that. But that said, by the way, because it's a levered way to play Bitcoin, when we get into the next bear market, it's going to get whooped. So if you're planning on holding strategy for the long run, then you better be ready for a 60 or 70 or 80% or more drawdown, I think, in the next bear market.
So there's a comment in the chat here from Chad, and it says Dr. Ross keeps referencing 2017. So he's thinking that Bitcoin is similar to 2017 and 2025. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that. I definitely think that. I think, for many reasons, but emotional. I'll go on the emotional side, and I'll let you do the analytical side. I think emotionally, this feels very much like the beginning of 2017 to me. We had a 2017 was hard to recapture the former all-time high, which was 1,000. Significant psychological barrier of 1,000, just like 100,000, except we're 100x beyond that now. So there was a big fight for that, similar to the fight for $100,000. And then we also, in about mid-March, I believe, the Winklevoss twins got denied their ETF. And we were all within the Bitcoin community very hopeful that the Winklevoss twins would get an ETF. Of course, it wouldn't happen for another 6 years, because the Winklevoss twins are nobodies in that world, and Larry Fink comes along, and all of a sudden he gets what he wants, where the people that have been trying for the ETF for 10 years get nothing. And so, there was a significant correction in mid-March when the Winklevoss ETF got denied, and people were basically saying it was over. Another emotional factor was, people were expecting a very muted cycle at the beginning of 2017. There wasn't this bullish fever euphoria that didn't develop until the absolute back half of the year. In the beginning of the year, I was telling people that Bitcoin was going to 3,200 or 3,500, and that sounded very it sounded wildly optimistic, right? Like I was like a bull tart. I was way out on the edge there by saying that. And then, of course, we know that, from November to, December, it went from like 8 grand to 20 grand, like instantaneously. So the euphoria caught on in a big way. And yeah, we had Trump, and we had the same underlying macroeconomics. So I mean, emotionally, there's a lot of things there that make me feel as if it is though, you know, not an exact replay, but they feel very similar.
Yeah, that's how I look at it too. In chat, I see your note. I think you think I'm stupid for saying that, but this setup is very, very similar. The dollar peaking and then rolling over, Treasury yields peaking and rolling over, liquidity coming primarily from China, from outside the U.S. That's very similar. There's so many similarities. It's astonishing. Do I think? Am I say? I think a lot of people think, oh, I must mean that it's going to go up 20x like it did back then. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying. But I do think it will surprise people to the upside for how high it could go, as especially as the U.S. economy starts to rev higher and rates come down and liquidity globally starts to increase. I think too many people are underestimating what's going to happen. I'm extremely optimistic. And what's also interesting is the data I look at. I'm even changing in real time. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was saying I think we're going to see kind of ever higher levels of inflation, not run away, not like hyperinflation, not like a second peak like it did back in the 70s. But I think that I was thinking we'd have it like kind of creep into the threes and then up to sort of 3.5 before the year ends this year. It's looking more like now that inflation is going to start declining, like it started in February, which I had anticipated. And I think we're going to see it kind of creep lower and lower. And if it does that, if we can get some relatively weak economic surprises, that
Mm,
can cause the Federal Reserve to get on board with doing more kind of quantitative easing, keeping interest rates lower instead of raising interest rates because of higher inflation. That's also very good for risk assets, and it's fantastic for Bitcoin. So, um, man, I'm
yeah.
just optimistic. So I don't think we get a 20x from here, but I think we have a very good year in 2025.
Let me give you a wildly optimistic scenario here, because like I might be more optimistic than Jeff, and I think that a 10x is not off the table, and within the year. And the reason why I believe that is because we're sort of at this stage in Bitcoin's adoption where we're really playing with fire, like we're cooking with gas now. Like nation, America, the most powerful nation state on earth, is talking about doing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So if we get that, I think $1 million is very possible, and certainly north of $500,000. Now, if we don't get that, then that's a different story, and it might be a little bit more muted in terms of what we've come to expect. But if you get an SBR, that's the starting gun on the global SAT race, and basically every nation state on Earth has to have their piece of the pie. And who is their piece of the pie being held by? A bunch of autistic retards on the internet. So they got to buy it from you, man. You know what I mean? And like they're gonna
Yes.
have to bid that up for a higher price so that you're willing to part with it, because there's a lot of crazy psychopath hodlers who've just been out here hodling for a long time, and I think something like greater than 70% of total Bitcoin supply is held by people with between 1 Bitcoin and 10,000 Bitcoin,
Hmm.
right? And if you think about who those people are, that's us. Those are the people that listen to live streams like this, that hang out on Bitcoin Twitter, that are on Bitcoin Clubhouse, that are, MSTR degen. Like those are the guys, right? Those are the guys who have the coins. And so the things that those people believe, guys and girls, the things that they believe ends up affecting how much Bitcoin is saleable on the market at any given time,
Hmm.
which price comes from the margin, and so that affects price, right? And so like not only do hodlers set the floor, but they also, in no in in no small way, I think, dictate the ceiling. Like, so what prices you are willing to accept as a OG hodler, um, don't sell yourself short. Like, you have a lot of power over the trajectory of this thing.
Yeah.
If we all simply didn't sell our Bitcoin, the price would be gajillions of dollars tomorrow. You know, but some of you are weak. And you need to, like, buy stuff. I don't know what you're buying, but I'm just kidding. I sell a little too. I like live off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. Yeah, lots of people need to learn from their mistakes, and I did too, right? Like I didn't take the advice of the smart people when I was first here. I was a degen trader. I thought I could earn more Bitcoin by trading crypto, like just an absolute moron, and I paid the price for that back in 2018. So, hey, I want to get to a couple of these other questions
Yeah.
here. Thanks for asking questions, you guys. I got to apologize again. Normally, I have these on Zapstream, and for some reason, it can't get it to link up to Zapstream right now. So I'm sorry for that. So Christopher asked a while back, Jeff, what's your take on the 10-year dropping so low, the 10-year yield dropping so low? Is it a short-term safety trade? I think, Christopher, that it's because we're starting to realize that inflation isn't going to be as hot as even I had been talking about it being for the first half of the year, at least. So if y'all want to, just remember this little mantra for longer dated treasury yields, they are based on the growth and inflation expectations over that time period. So if you think that inflation is going to start coming down, yields will start coming down. If you think that inflation over time is going to go up and economic growth is going to go higher, then those two things added together should lead to higher longer term treasury yields. So because those are coming down, because it looks like America is going to have solid GDP growth but not like off the charts, and slightly lower inflation expectations, that makes these longer term yields drop down. So that's all that I think is happening. I wouldn't read any more into that. And then Irish Cowboy Warrior asked, who produced the research on the 7 to 13 week delay between M2 and Bitcoin price? Like I said, it's Michael Howell of Cross Border Capital. He does the best work on global liquidity out there. I use poor man's versions of it from TradingView, and they're generally directionally correct. He does like the real work on it. So if you want to actually follow that stuff, then check him out. I think he's mostly on Twitter. Um,
PP says, "Come on, LOL. Bitcoin is max 200K this year. Listen, bro, that's weak, okay, and pathetic. Have some self-respect. Believe in higher prices." No, I don't. I mean, listen, we could get a very bad Bitcoin cycle if many things don't go our way. I'm not discounting that, but I think it would be. I think it's unwise to discount the optimistic, scenario. At least be positioned for it, right?
yep.
Like, don't sell all your Bitcoin at 200K.
Yeah. Yeah, if you believe that, because there are a lot of people who think that, right? And there are a lot of people who follow Giovanni, the power law dude, where he has his diminishing cycle theory. That's
Right.
fine. Like if you want to sell some at like 200 to 250 because you think that's the top, it's not a bad. You're not going to lose money doing that, but you may miss out on some serious upside gains if you do that. And so I would, and I think HODL would agree with this. Don't sell everything because you're positive that that's the top, because if you're wrong and it blasts to 500 or a million, you're going to really kick yourself. So don't be one of those people.
I
That
have a
happened. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just gonna say I have a hard time with all these models because they can't account for demand, right? And there's basically, an infinite amount of there's an ocean of fiat capital out there searching for places to park itself and avoid debasement. And Bitcoin is an infinite, container or storehold for global wealth. And not to mention like the monetary premiums that are in things like real estate and collectible. I mean, I know people who are buying $25,000 comic books like that. Why?
Right.
Why? Like, that's just a greater fool game. Whereas, with Bitcoin, like we actually have a stable foundation here that could last, many thousands of years potentially. So, yeah, I think people are people are waking up to the reality that Bitcoin is here to stay. It's a big deal, and then unfortunately, they're all buying XRP. Everybody who calls me is like, "What about XRP, dude?" I'm like, "Jesus, it's been so many years of this. I can't do it. I can't do it."
I have the exact same thing. I literally, there people are like, yeah, I'm totally into Bitcoin too. I just bought some XRP Bitcoin. Like, okay. And then I actually have a response that I emailed to somebody, and then so many other people have been asking me also about Ripple that I just copy and paste that email I sent, and I said, here's what I
Yeah.
sent to this person. So it
I
drives me
I
nuts.
don't even I don't even bother hiding my disgust anymore. I just go, "Bleh, bleh, no." Somebody said, "When do you think GameStop will announce that they bought Bitcoin?" Ed, what do you think about this? GameStop has 5 billion in cash on their balance sheet, and they've been, the CEO met with Saylor. They've been sort of hinting at they're going to buy some Bitcoin. You think they make a big splash? They go big on it?
I do. If I had to bet, I'd say it's. It looks like it's the stars are starting to align, and they're gonna they're probably accumulating it as we speak right now, and then they're gonna make an announcement at some point. That would be my guess. I have no insight. Obviously, I have no idea if they are. They should do it, right? They have a crappy, declining, dying business, and they have a lot of cash. So what do you do? Like MicroStrategy, you buy Bitcoin and you rejigger your business. So they have the possibility to become like another strategy if they play it right.
I saw something on Twitter the other day that the amount of MicroStrategy copycats is up and to the right as well, right? So like if you chart them all out, it's going parabolic. Like so many people are getting the memo. What was interesting to me is I had this backwards actually. This was incorrect. I thought that um, it would be a larger company than MicroStrategy, like a Meta or something that would want to copy the strategy so that they could do it even more effectively than MSTR. Wrong. It's all of the low zombie companies that need the cash on balance sheet, in order to pump the value of their stock price. And
Hmm.
once I flipped that and had a different understanding of it, I was like, okay. And actually, it's interesting because, okay, I used to listen to Preston Fisher's podcast like a long time ago before I ever became a Bitcoiner. And then I became a Bitcoiner shortly before Preston did and whatever. But I was always interested in value investing, right? And I think that we're seeing Bitcoin actually bring a return of value investing to the market because I look at some of these companies that have Bitcoin on balance sheet and some of them are trading below the book value of their Bitcoin, right? And I mean they're like penny stocks, right? Some of them now, but it makes it a lot easier to tell like what's true and what's not in the market and you can pick up some of the cigar butts as Benjamin Graham called them. Whereas without Bitcoin in the market, those things really don't exist anymore.
Yeah, and that's the way to do it. There are tons and tons of small businesses, at least in the U.S., thousands of small businesses that are barely making it. Right?
Right.
They're living off of rolling their debt. They have enough cash flow just to stay alive for a while. These higher interest rates are really going to hurt them, so they're praying for lower interest rates for sure. Because when they have to roll their debt, they want to do so at lower rates. But if they want to survive for another decade, they have to get on a Bitcoin standard for sure. And so
Totally.
I agree with you too. I think everyone is waiting for like the Mag 7, somebody to say they're buying Bitcoin. That's cool, but they're not going to turn into Bitcoin businesses. They're just going to
Right.
put some on their balance sheet, kind of like Tesla is doing. They don't, Elon doesn't really understand it. But he has what 11,000 Bitcoin or something on the balance sheet of Tesla, and who knows? He might sell it, he might not. I don't trust him when it comes to understanding Bitcoin for sure. He's trying to fix Bitcoin, which is kind of funny. Um, but yeah,
This
it's a
Irish,
light. It's a sorry. It's I was just gonna say it's a lifeline for these small businesses though that are
yeah,
barely making it.
Irish Cowboy wants to know if don't all the MSTR copycats ultimately dilute the MSTR returns? In my opinion, I think they are accretive to MSTR because they are marginally impacting the price of Bitcoin, which MSTR holds close to 500,000 Bitcoin. So I think they help MSTR.
I think they help, but I think that the relative outperformance of MicroStrategy will come down over time because
Yes,
of the copycats. So I think it's very good for Bitcoin over time to have more and more MicroStrategy copycats, and that's sort of ultimately good for MicroStrategy too. But that huge outperformance we see because they're the only player in the game or they're the lead dog, that will diminish, I think, over time, and that's a good thing, by the way.
I
I
do.
also
I do
think,
have to
sorry.
say that MST. Well, one thing is I think we know that being a true believer in Bitcoin is crucial, and Michael Saylor is a true believer, right? And so, if I'm looking at parking my capital with like an MSTR or versus an MSTR copycat, and I see a CEO who opportunistically bought Bitcoin in order to pump the share price versus a CEO who's autistically obsessed with Bitcoin like Michael Saylor is, then I want to go with the obsessed guy. I want to go
Yeah.
with the guy who's like me because I'm obsessed also, you know.
Yeah. I totally agree. That's a lot of people ask me like, hey, do I invest in Semler Scientific in my fund, or these other kind of early copycats? I don't, because of just what HODL said. I think Saylor is just all 100%, 110% in, just obnoxiously autistically into Bitcoin, and he's not going to change. I think by the way, and I got this from I actually increased my level of conviction on MicroStrategy after the Madeira talk, where he basically said, I thought that we have this gold rush happening and until I think the year 2034. At that point, it'll 99% of all Bitcoin will have been mined. I think I'm getting that
Yeah.
mostly right. And I think he is also in that gold rush mentality. I think he thinks, okay, I have until 2034 to just go absolutely bananas and borrow as much money as the markets will give me to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. And that's his goal. And I think that's literally his entire goal, is just to accumulate as much as possible until the year 2034. And then who knows what will happen after that. But I think it's a pretty safe bet between now and 2034 that all MicroStrategy will do is just accumulate more Bitcoin and do very well because of it.
I mean, it's a good strategy. Keep it simple, you know.
Right.
Go
So it looks like Fish Bernoulli is not coming, huh? Have you heard from
He
him?
told me I fucked up and told him the wrong time apparently. Apparently Texas is on Central Time. I didn't this
Oh
this
yeah,
motherfucker I didn't know where he was in the world. That's my bad.
no
So
worries.
he's on his way. He's getting here.
Oh, he
Great.
might still come. Okay.
It might be a good. Oh, there he is.
Hey,
Where's
here he comes.
Fish?
Fish, you're muted.
You're muted, bro.
There he is.
What's up?
Hey.
What's going on, man?
Yo.
Welcome.
Sorry, I fucked up and told you the wrong time. That's okay.
Yeah. He's like 12 your time. I should have done the math from your time, not whatever you told me. I should know better
Hey,
than that.
now that Fish is here, maybe we can do some Bitcoin cycle timing stuff, because that's something Fish is really good at.
Oh, score.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to bring him on.
Yeah, Fish, do you see a way for you to share your screen and so you can share your charts? Just so you know, we've been talking about MSTR, Bitcoin, dollar strength, and Treasury rates so far. So you can take it from here. Not to put you on the
I hear
spot.
miners running in the background where Fish is.
Well, maybe that might be my computer. I don't know. That laptop's kind of screams. Where? What?
So me and Fish, I'll give you a little backstory while Fish is queuing up his charts. Me and Fish last cycle, 2021, spent the whole year talking about cycle timing and when the cycle was going to peak and correctly predicting it, right? But then based on timing, right? Because we both called it. We were like, it's going to peak in November. Whoa, something's going on there. We both called it. We were like, it's going to peak in November, but then it did peak in November, and we saw the 69K price, and we were like, nah, that can't be the peak. But so we kept holding, and then we went all the way back down again. Of course, as one does. But we had correctly predicted it in terms of time based on some of Fish's methodology here, but we did not predict it in terms of price, and so we got caught with our pants down, as one is known to do. You know?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I when I even recently I went back and looked at some of my charts, and it was all of my top predictions were right here, like October, November of 21. But yeah, we were just after the big drop with the mining ban, it was like we dropped so far, and then it was like, well, we're making new all-time highs. I'm just bullish. I don't know what to think. It's not over yet.
Can you get closer to your mic? You sound like you're far away.
Yeah.
There you go.
Nice.
And then see, there's this in the settings. There's this button that says echo cancellation. It might kill some of your background noise.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. And then we'll talk charts. There you go. Oh wait, no, that's just him muting.
Putting on
Oh,
headphones.
he's got headphones.
That'll
Yeah,
work.
where are your fucking headphones? This is a fucking real podcast, man.
Come on, man. I'm trying
This is Dr. Jeff's real podcast. He's doing a good job. You come here, you don't even put them on.
I love it.
There we go. Is that better?
That's better. Yeah,
A little better.
Nice.
a little better. Go up into your settings and hit echo cancellation.
I don't see the settings.
It should be on your screen. It's above you.
When I'm sharing screen.
Oh, sorry, you're sharing your screen right now. That's okay. Now go into settings and hit echo cancellation. Hit.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, whatever. Fuck
That's
it.
as good as it
Now
gets.
Sorry.
Go back
That's all
and
right.
show us your chart.
We can still hear you. There's just a lot of background humming, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
I bet it's still using the mic from my
It sounds like it is.
computer.
Yeah, it is. That's what's going on. God, you suck at this, man. This is why you don't do podcasts, bro.
Dude, you're ruining my show. I'm like,
I ruin everyone's show or life anywhere. It doesn't let me change the audio input. I don't know.
that's all right.
I'm sorry.
Let's
Son of
just
a bitch.
check out your charts.
Yeah. Let's see. So, wait, where'd that share button go? There it is. Ooh.
Man, this better be worth it, Fish. This better be good alpha, dude. I swear to God. I vouch for you to this live chat, bro.
And then told me the wrong time.
That was my bad. Yeah, that was my bad.
I
take
started out with a lot of timing stuff. No, I've lost it. Yeah.
Just talk a little louder so you're louder than your background noise.
Yeah. So just looking at, I've always looked at a lot of just I started looking at this stuff in 2017, because I noticed the time frames of the previous bull run. It was a really similar behavior, and I sometime in 2018, 2019, I started comparing the different periods that you can see to to see how it compared. And I think one of the really important points is that the retest of prior all-time high. I think that's sort of a defining point in these cycles that just seem to keep happening. And the time from there to the all-time high has been really similar, and the time from the low to that breakout has been really similar. It's give or take a few weeks. Let's see. So
what do you, let's talk about from the bottom here and project out a peak and see what you're seeing for this time around.
Yeah, this time around, and I've looked at this a lot of different ways. I think my favorite new one is that one of the most consistent timings is from the day of the U.S. presidential election to the all-time high. Has been incredibly consistent. You can see 56 weeks, 57 weeks, 53 weeks. So, here's a great example. I averaged those and gives 55 weeks out, which comes out to the week of Monday, November 24th of 2025 for a projected peak. And that comes out in line really well with a lot of the different methods that I've used. They all point at October, November of this year for a cycle top.
That's not, Jeff, that's not too dissimilar from your prediction.
Right. Back before I nuked my Twitter account, I had been saying Halloween of 2025 was about when I was thinking the next cycle top would happen, if it followed past cycles.
Yeah.
Did you come to it with a similar sort of analysis?
I did that. Everything that Fish is showing here, I went through this for like a week. I was just going through all these cycle timing things. The only thing that gets me from following this kind of thing to a T, because it's uncanny how repetitive this is.
It is.
Is I still like to see what global liquidity is doing, and think like I look at like what the manufacturing sector, so like how the economy is doing as well. Anyways, I kind of factor those in, but I do look at this very closely. I will definitely be looking for a peak somewhere in the fourth quarter of 2025.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. I think most of us who've been around Bitcoin for a long time, we sort of have a default belief in Bitcoin cycles. And the reason why is because it shouldn't happen, and yet they seem to continuously reoccur. And so every year you think to yourself, like, it's not going to happen, and then it happens exactly as you thought it might happen. And there are all these reasons why it shouldn't happen, and then it does. It
Right.
reoccurs again, you know.
And it's crazy. And people, I go on shows all the time, and they're like, "Well, why does it happen?" I'm like, "I have no idea. I can't make it make sense." Most people say, "Well, it's because of the halving." I don't think that's why it happens. I think it's unrelated to the halvings.
I think, yeah, totally. I thought that for a long time, and then I was looking at the inconsistency of that timing, and it just, it really doesn't make sense. It's like maybe early on, but now the change in supply is so de minimis that I really don't think that has anything to do with it.
Yep.
Yet at the same time, we still broke out from all-time highs. Not counting that 74K top, I think that doesn't really count as an all-time high, inflation adjusted. But I was predicting right after this period in the box we would actually break away from that area, and we sure did. Right? It's bizarre, and I keep trying to figure out, like, at some point it's not going to be the same. It's not going to follow the same wave, but it's amazing how much it has so far.
Yeah.
So
Fish.
so
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Fish, based on your cycle, so say we do hit a cycle October or November of 2025, what is your thing showing that you think, what's the kind of general price range you think Bitcoin might be at in dollar terms?
I think price is a lot more difficult than the timing. At least it has been for me. I do have a lot of methods I've tried to use to do that, but this is what I really like. It's basically like the Mare multiple, but it uses the 40. I think it's the 45 week, and they're just all golden ratios of the 45 week. I think it's really interesting. You can see way back in 2011, we came up to the red line at the top. Next was orange, another line down, hit yellow in 2017. The last time we, in that early top, at least, we topped against the green curve. And, if I use this, I mean, HODL's going to hate me for it. I feel like it's kind of bearish. But in that November time frame, this is just a sketch of probably what that blue curve will look like. But that puts us at about 240,000.
Nice. Hey, question from the audience, Fish. We were talking about this before you got here from Chad. Does Fish think that the current cycle is similar to the 2017 cycle? Both HODL and I think that it is in a lot of ways. What do you think?
I definitely do. It really looks that way. I've done a lot of, you can do the candle like overlays, and it's really hard to not see that. The timing of the moves has been extremely similar.
Mm-hmm.
Each little wave, they're not exactly the same, but right from the all-time high, this was one, and I haven't edited this for a couple of years, and I just had some things on here, and you can see these green bars are, that is the 2017 cycle. Yeah. And you can see how similar it actually looks. I made this sometime in like 2022, and it's followed such a similar pattern from the top, bottoming out, and you get these little waves up. Even this one looks really similar. Top, peak, consolidate, make another jump up. And here, we're right in line with that 2017 price. I have a hard time seeing us going up. What is this, like another 700%? But you never know.
You never know.
I mean, there's a comment here from PP who's a little more bearish, and he says, by the way, PP, hilarious. He says, so Bitcoin is going to reach 4 to 5 trillion. Where is the money going to come from? And it's like, well, Bitcoin is already just under 2 trillion right now. Where did the where did the money come from for that, right? I mean, like an additional 2 trillion is nothing really in
Can,
terms of
can I
okay.
jump in here?
Yeah.
Because you said this earlier, but this is what I think most people don't get about this. And you said earlier, HODL, that price moves on the margin. And I think most people don't understand what that means. And so let me give you an example,
Agreed.
PP.
Agreed.
We don't need 4 to 5 trillion more dollars to come in because there's a multiplier effect. So let me give you this example. I like to just move it completely away from Bitcoin. Okay, so think about, you have a neighborhood, okay, and you have 10 houses that are all built by the same builder. They're all exactly the same, and they all have a market value on Zillow of 500 grand a piece. Okay, so 10 houses, 500 grand a piece. That's $5 million total market cap, right? So the value of that neighborhood is $5 million. Now say that one of those homeowners decides to sell his house. He puts it on the market, and there's a new buyer that comes in and he buys that one house that's for sale, and he buys it for $1 million. Okay, what that does instantly is the other 9 houses, the value of those houses shoots up instantly from $500,000 to $1 million. They're exactly the same house. They're not for sale, but the one house that's for sale, that's on the market, that's on the margin, you could say, has now a value of $1 million. So now the market cap of that neighborhood has just shot up from $5 million to $10 million, right? So you see that? So even though only $1 million of capital came in to buy that house, the total market cap jumped from $5 million to $10 million. So this is exactly how it works in Bitcoin too. So Bitcoin, there are the vast majority of the 21 million coins are sitting in some wallet somewhere or on some exchange somewhere, and they are not moving. They are not for sale. But there are a small number of coins that are always for sale. So there are buyers and sellers for those coins. So if in a bull market, when liquidity conditions improve, when banks start lending, when the economy starts revving up, when all the countries around the world are flooding the system with global monetary supply, global M2 monetary supply, and all that stuff, those are extra dollars that are competing for the few Bitcoin that are for sale on the market. And if there aren't enough of them, what happens is there's more buyers than sellers, so that the price has to be driven higher because of that. So that's how you can get, maybe we only get, say, $1 trillion of new money, or even $500 billion of new money. If there just aren't that many Bitcoin for sale, that will drive the overall market cap much, much higher. So that's how the pricing works, and most people have a hard time. Does that make sense to you guys?
Oh,
Yeah.
completely. And I agree with you that most people don't understand the idea or the mental model of price coming from the margin. And I think also if you think about it, you know, okay, Bitcoin broke 100K and then it's been chopping sideways for a long time and now we're going down. Why is that happening? Well, I saw some analysis on Twitter saying, long-term hodlers are selling. And I was like, I don't know any that are selling, and I talked to a lot of them. So like, is that true? And then I looked a little deeper into it, and it was like people from 2021 onward, that they're counting that as long-term hodlers. And it's like, yeah, I guess they are long-term hodlers. But if you think about the psychology of a lot of the people that came in 2021, they were sort of promised 100K, and 100K was a number that they were fixated on, and then they got 100K, and then a lot of them were like, hey, fuck this. This was like an annoying long bear market. I don't want to deal with this shit again. And I think a lot of the selling is coming from like, you know, air quotes long-term hodlers, but people who are kind of from last cycle, you know. And once we sort of make our way through, those people, and then we get to the people who are, the real long-term hodlers, we can begin to go up. There won't be as much sell pressure.
Yep.
Yeah, yep, I totally agree. I think, and just a lot of the volume that happens is, I don't know if it's the degen traders or the market makers, what's going on, but I think people try to get out and get back in, and then end up with less Bitcoin. I think it happens constantly. And yeah, and then there's also the factor we've not had before of the ETFs. And like I had pointed out a couple of days ago, because like HODL and I and some other people were talking, and it was like, who's selling? Like, who's out here dumping Bitcoin? And then I started looking at the ETF flows, and I'm like, oh man, FBTC dumped $250 million of Bitcoin yesterday. That's kind of wild, and it's a lot of those, that the newer people that aren't experienced with this, and they're like, "Oh no, the top is in. It's all over. I'm gonna dump my ETF shares." So I think a lot's coming from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair to the sellers, there is so much bear porn out there right now. Like yeah, I'm so optimistic that I force myself to watch the recessionistas and rewatch watch the bear porn people literally every day. I do, it just about kills me watching these guys. But they're telling everybody like it is worse than 1929, worse than 1999. We are going to have an 80% correction in the stock market, and if the stock market goes down 80%, what do you think is going to happen to Bitcoin? It's going to go down 99%. These kind of people, and so they're terrifying people. So I get messages from people all the time saying, oh my gosh, is this it? Do we move to cash? If they're reaching out to me, that probably means they've already been selling.
Yeah.
They're already terrified. They need somebody to hold their hand, and I'm just like, I could be wrong too, but I don't know how these same people look at the same data that I look at, and they must have just the darkest colored glasses, and I must have these psychedelic rose colored glasses, because I think it looks awesome out there from a macro standpoint. I think I don't see anything but an economy that's improving with rates and interest rates are coming down, the dollar's weakening, M2 is increasing. Manufacturing is finally coming out of a recession that it's been in for 2.5 years, and it's finally revving up here in the US. I think we're in for a surprise to the upside, and I'm personally just exceedingly bullish. So those are the people who I think are selling. There's a lot of people who just don't understand macro, and they're listening to the wrong people, is my take.
Well, and it's funny because those people have had that same perspective for the last 15 years. I mean,
Yeah.
like they don't stop. Peter Schiff was ecstatic the other day because gold was up while Bitcoin was down for the first time in 15 fucking years. It's like, you know what? I'm just gonna let him have this one. Just gonna let him have it.
Yep.
Like enjoy your day, Peter. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Good for him.
Because because for the last 15 years we've been kicking your ass up and down the court. You know what I mean? It's just been an absolute nonstop, slugfest where we just beat the shit out of every asset on earth. But go ahead, have your
Right.
day.
Every
Have your day.
day. And I tell people, I used to be a gold bug. Like before I figured out Bitcoin, I was a sound money guy, and I was into gold and silver and gold miners and silver miners within my fund and as an investor. So I get it. Like I get this whole thing. Like Peter, like when you listen to Peter talk, like I'm jiving with 98% of what he says until he gets to Bitcoin, and then he just makes a buffoon of himself. But he gets it. Like he gets the need for sound money. He gets the problem with monetary debasement and inflation and all that kind of stuff. He just needs to go that last mile. But clearly, he's incentivized to believe that gold is better because that's his business.
Yeah.
And so, what I tell people who own gold, I have a respect for you if you're into gold because you're a sound money advocate. I get that. But consider these amazing gains you've had in gold. Consider maybe putting some of that into even sounder money called Bitcoin while it's
Totally.
richly valued, because it won't stay this valued.
By the way, I think something people should know is, we talked a lot about like comparisons to 2017. We may be right, we may be wrong on that, but I think if we do get something similar to 2017, that there's going to be a lot of vol, a lot. So in 2017, we had like 7 or 8 greater than 30% corrections, 30% or greater. And Michael Saylor's been out here saying volatility is vitality, and I totally agree with that. And I think that's how we get paid as investors is by suffering the volatility, or
Yep.
sort of evening it out. And you have to embrace the vol to the downside and be positioned for it and be ready for it, and basically like be able to hodl your way through. And a lot of that comes from basic budgeting and having your life expenses squared away, and don't put in money that you need next week because it could be down next week, right? And then also understanding what Bitcoin is. Even if you're a person who's, now there are these guys who are all in MSTR, right? And I appreciate that. I respect that. I wouldn't go that far out on the risk curve myself, but if I was 10 years younger, like a lot of them are, then I might be in their same position, right? But I still think at the same time you have to have a deep understanding and respect for Bitcoin, especially as somebody who's all in on levered Bitcoin. Right? So like,
Right.
do your due diligence, run a node, practice self custody, practice Bitcoin transactions, read mastering Bitcoin, read programming Bitcoin, read the Bitcoin standard, read digital gold, like read Lynn Alden's book. Like there's a lot to know here, and your confidence is going to come from your competence in terms of how much you are able to understand about what's going on here. Because we as Bitcoiners, like me and Jeff and guys like us, we just think a lot of the stuff that people say about Bitcoin is just totally stupid and silly and pointless. And to us, it's just all noise. But when you're new here, the noise feels very loud. The chatter is very loud, and it can be tough to ignore it. So,
Yep.
do your research.
Love it. Great points. Fish had to jump, by the way, so that was fun having him. I just want to add one thing to what HODL says. This seems like super common sense to me, but it doesn't seem like it is to a lot of normies. You have to spend less than you make. You have to spend less than you save in order to become wealthy in Bitcoin terms. A lot of people are like, well, how can you possibly live on a Bitcoin standard because it's so volatile? Like that shouldn't matter. Like if you're paying your bills in Bitcoin and you're actually spending less than you earn, you'll have a little bit left over for savings every couple of weeks, every month, however long it takes to get paid. You won't instantly get wealthy. It's a slow compounding effect that eventually kind of goes exponential over time. And when
Yep.
you're just starting out, it's hard to see those gains, but over time it starts to do this. And over time, this level of purchasing power that you've achieved on your Bitcoin standard will be enough for you to actually start living off of. You can start using that as an annuity if you want to. I'm not a big fan of the concept of retirement, but if you can go out and you have the financial flexibility to do whatever the heck you want to do because you're on a Bitcoin standard. So just make
Totally.
sure that you're smart about it and that you're spending less than you make. It seems like an obvious point to me, but not to everybody.
No, it's important to hammer home the common sense, obvious points. I think another thing people need to understand about compounding is that with compounding, all of the gains come at the very end, right? And so you can be in an investment, let's say, for 30 years, and for the vast majority of the 30 years, like almost nothing happened in the investment. And then in the last 5 years of the 30, you made $30 million. Like that's how compounding works, right? It doesn't look like it's doing much until it does a lot and goes exponential, you know?
Yep, great point. Love that. A couple more questions, and then let's jump,
Yep.
HODL. Irish Cowboy Warrior, what's your safe withdrawal rate? I use 8%. And the reason why I chose 8% is because one, it's double the traditional rate of withdrawal for retirement is 4%, the 4% rule they call it, which is based on a portfolio basically of 80% stocks, 20% bonds. The reason why I think it's very safe to use, and by the way, I have pushback. There are prominent Bitcoiners, and there's one in particular who doesn't like this. They think this is wildly risky. I just completely disagree with that. Bitcoin, even if it slows down its annual rate of return, I still think it's going to return probably 25% or so, 20% throughout the 2030s, maybe more in like the 15% range in the 2040s. So that may sound disappointing to people, but that is way more than what stocks return, way more than bonds or gold or housing or whatever you want. It's still a fantastic rate of return, and it might actually outperform my predictions. So if you're only taking 8% per year off, and that's by the way per year. So say you start with one Bitcoin and you want to start like taking some of that down to spend it down to live off of, you would take, 0.08 Bitcoin, you would sell that much and use that to live off, and you wouldn't take any more for the rest of the year. Then the next year, you're left with 0.92 Bitcoin. You would take 8% of that, whatever that's worth, and use that for a living, and so on and so on. And so over time, you're diminishing your stack, but the value in dollar terms of that stack and in value and purchasing power should increase over time faster than your withdrawal rate of 8%. So that's why I use 8%.
Jeff, do you have a Kager prediction? Looking back on the 2020s, what do you think Bitcoin's Kager will have been when we look back in 2030?
Throughout the 2020s,
Yeah.
like if you total out, so I think so. I think it's diminishing over time. I think it
Mhm.
started at kind of like 60-ish%, and I think it's coming down to more like 35% or so
Yeah.
overall. So, blended maybe like a 45 to 50% CAGR.
We
How
have
about
the
you?
same. Yeah, that's the same Kager. I have
Okay.
50%. I think 50% will be the Kager of the 2020s, and then cut it in half for the 2030s, 25%.
Yep, it's about how I look at it. And again, if that's disappointing to people, I would encourage you to look at any other asset class. and it's greatly outperforming any other asset class. So don't be too disappointed with that rate.
Tesla did like 63% in its first decade, something like that. So like 50%, 63%, like you're crushing it. You're crushing it.
Right.
These are stellar returns.
Yeah, it's hard not to get wealthy if you're holding at something with those kind of rates of
Yeah.
return. So anything else, HODL?
No, that's it, man. I'm bullish. I'm always bullish. I stay bullish. People are gonna make. Listen, I'll tell you what's gonna happen. I'm gonna be wildly bullish. I'm gonna say $1 million of Bitcoin. We're gonna go to $750,000 of Bitcoin. People are gonna be like, "Oh, HODL was wrong, fucking loser." And then for 2 years, people are gonna give me shit during the bear market and be like, "Yeah, dude, weren't you were saying 1 million, right? That's what you were saying." And then I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, I wish it would have got to a million, whatever." And then after the 2 years of bullshit are over, the price is going to rocket back up, and then it is going to go beyond 1 million, and then I'll be right. That's what's going to happen. So
Boltards are always right in the end. You just have to wait a little longer. I love it. Let's end on that.
Jeff, thanks for having me on. Happy to come on anytime.
We'll do it again. Thanks,
All
brother.
right.
Appreciate you.
Bye, man.
Bye. Don't leave just yet.
No, I know.
It has to upload it.